Thank you so much for joining us this morning in person and on the live stream. I'm Anna Palmer, CEO and one of the founders of Punchbowl News. We are thrilled to be here for a pop-up news conversation with Representative Nicole Malliotakis, the Republican from New York. A big thank you to Intuit for partnering with us to make this conversation possible. I will be talking news of the day as well as tax policy, the topic du jour of 2025. With Representative Malliotakis. Afterward, I'm going to be joined on stage by Intuit's CEO, Sasan Goodarzi, for a fireside chat. As always, you can find Punchbowl News on all social media channels at Punchbowl News, and we encourage you to share this conversation there. With that, let's welcome the Congresswoman to the stage. Good morning. All right, good morning.
Good to see you.
Yes. All right. Well, Congressman, thank you so much for joining us on a busy Tuesday. It's Greek Independence Day, which I know has a lot of activities for you.
That's right.
We are going to start with a few news of the day questions, as we always do. We must start with the big news of yesterday. We were talking about it backstage. The Atlantic broke a bombshell story about Trump administration officials chatting about war plans on Signal. Should Congress investigate? Is there a problem with the fact that you have these folks kind of potentially diving into state secrets on Signal?
I think it's definitely an issue. It's definitely a problem. It almost read like an episode of Veep to me. And I think it's something that honestly needs to be addressed to increase or improve, I should say, the protocols for the future. And I think this was really a learning experience for everybody who uses these apps and thinks that they are secure, and obviously it's problematic, and so it does need to be addressed. We need to make sure that these apps are not being used to transmit classified information. And I have a general policy, which I told you before, which is I don't say anything on these apps that I wouldn't say on the radio, right? That should be, I think, a general policy for every politician or anyone who truly wants to communicate and feels that they don't want their communications to be made public.
I think that's a good rule of thumb for all of us. I'm going to take that back to the Punchbowl News team. Shifting gears a little bit, President Trump has been pressing Congress to take action when it comes to judges. He's been very frustrated with some of the rulings, most recently wanting to impeach them. Do you think this is something House Republicans should take up on the floor? Is this more of a committee action? How upset are you about kind of the judicial issue right now?
Look, I think it's frustrating for a lot of people, right? And I experience this on a regular basis being from New York City. We have a lot of activist judges. We have prosecutors who actually think they're criminal defense attorneys, right, instead of prosecutors. And we have to recognize, I think, when you look at where are these judges coming from? How do they get placed where they are placed? On the local, state level, I mean, many of them are elected, and so the electorate has an opportunity to change that if they don't like it. Or they're oftentimes appointed, which is the case here on the federal level, where you have to hold the people who are appointing them, whether that's your mayor, your governor, or your president, accountable for these appointments. I think the real oversight here belongs in the Senate, where the Senate is actually doing these confirmation hearings, and these things need to be exposed at that level. I think for too long, we've had judges that have been rubber stamped by the Senate and have not gone through the proper vetting process. It's almost, in some cases, been like a formality or procedural, as opposed to really exposing some of the radical views of these judges. And so what I would say is I think it's appropriate to maybe have a hearing on this and kind of examine it further for transparency and for the American people to see exactly how these decisions are made, and then we'll go from there.
All right, one last news of the day question, then we're going to get to tax policy, where we have a lot to talk about. House and Senate negotiators and some White House officials are starting to meet on trying to combine the two reconciliation packages, right? So we went through the first part of the process, and now the devil's really in the details. The Speaker has said he wants raising the debt limit as part of this bigger package. Is that something you support, or do you think, hey, actually, it's not a make or break and the debt limit could potentially be added with a disaster relief package separately?
I'll support it wherever it can get the 218. I think that's the magic question. And whatever vehicle that is, And I don't think we necessarily know the answer right now. I mean, I think it's good to have a goal, an idea of where we're going to put it. And if it's in reconciliation and the speaker wants to do that, I think this is a call that's going to be made by the president and the speaker, right? That's going to be their call, and then we have to be the players that get it done. But at the end of the day, everything is like changing constantly, right? And it's almost like a Rubik's Cube, where as pieces get moved and things change, and you lose votes, you gain votes. And so I think it's a matter of, what vehicle can it be put in where it gets to the 218? And that's still something that we don't know the answer to.
We are going to be watching it very closely. Let's shift to the tax reform conversation. First off, 100,000 feet. There were a lot of details to be worked out, as we were just discussing, when it comes to extending the Trump tax cuts. What will actually be in that final package? But what's your top priority? If there's one thing that you are going to be really pushing for, that you're going to make the case to the speaker on, what is it?
Well, I have three. Do I have to really pick one?
No, you can do three. It's okay.
I plan to get all three, by the way. So, the good news is my three happen to be on the president's list as well. That makes it a little easier for me as I push these three. But one of them is obviously restoring some type of SALT relief coming from New York. This is really important. I think we need to recognize the reason we need SALT relief on the federal level is because my mayor and my governor tax people to death. And that's the reality. They created this problem, but we will try to address it and provide some relief for middle-class families. And that is one of the biggest priorities for not just me, but New York and New Jersey members. The other one is reducing taxes for our senior citizens. This is something that I've spoken with the president about very much, very often. We both see eye to eye on this. You cannot eliminate the Social Security tax in reconciliation. So what I've done is introduce legislation that would increase the deduction that seniors are eligible for. And we'd have to limit it and put some parameters in place. My bill limits it really to more low income, middle income senior citizens. And so if we do that, that would provide, I think, some decent relief for our seniors and reduces the tax burden. I think that's something that we can go into the whole issue of why seniors are paying taxes on their Social Security. The short answer is because the thresholds have not been changed in 4 decades. It's been 40 years. So since Ronald Reagan was president, they set these thresholds that if you earn combined income of more than $25,000 for individuals, $32,000 for married seniors, you are taxed on above that. And so it's problematic. It has never been indexed. We need to index it. We need to fix it at some point. But what we can do in reconciliation right now is provide that extra deduction for seniors to reduce their tax liability. And the third thing is I've been very much an advocate for bringing our supply chain home. COVID, we all say it, COVID taught us anything, is that we cannot rely on communist China or foreign countries, but particularly communist China, for our pharmaceuticals. And I have legislation that would utilize Puerto Rico and other territories who have an infrastructure. Puerto Rico in particular has the ability to return significant manufacturing here, repatriate it here in the United States, and we should be working with Puerto Rico to do that. But overall, some type of tax incentive for manufacturing, for our sensitive supply chains, which, as you know, it's not just an economics issue, jobs issue, it is obviously a national security issue. Right now, we have about 250 drugs that are in shortage in this country, including chemotherapies and antibiotics. And so our legislation would help bring some of that supply chain home. And I think that's something that also falls in line with what the president's trying to accomplish, and many members on both sides of the aisle. So I think we have a good shot at getting that done as well.
Simplification of the tax code is something that we hear a lot about. The TCJA, the last time the tax was passed, made strides in this area. Mm-hmm. How important is it to you when it comes to that, when it's this overall strategy? I mean, everybody's complains. We're all in the middle of doing our own taxes about how complicated it is.
It's complicated. I think it's hard to change. But as you did mention, in TCJA, there were a couple of initiatives. When we doubled the standard deduction, for example, doubling of the child tax credit, you simplified the brackets. They were eliminating the alternative minimum tax, which was huge for my constituents. If you represent middle-class communities like I do, they were hit by the AMT very hard, and it made the tax process very complicated because they literally had to calculate their taxes twice. So the elimination of the AMT, I think, was probably one of the most significant provisions from TCJA that affected my constituents, and we have to make sure that that stays eliminated, that doesn't rear its head and try to come back in this anyway, particularly when we're talking about salts and some other things that were kind of looked at as tied. So look, we should try to make it as simple as possible. It's not easy. Steve Forbes had that flat tax idea, which, wasn't terrible. But I think that, we have to try to simplify it for people, for just for better understanding. If you can have 3 accountants do your taxes and they could all maybe come up with different numbers.
Right.
And that's pretty scary.
DOGE is a major topic of discussion around the country. Republicans have been fairly supportive of the Trump administration's plans to try to cut wasteful spending. But what is your reaction to some of the budget shifts at a place like the IRS?
Mm-hmm. Well, look, I think the goals of DOGE are very good goals. We want to find efficiencies. We want to find savings. We want to cut unnecessary overhead. We want to make programs to ensure that the money that taxpayers give the government, right, is not wasted, that's actually used for their intended purpose. And so I think that at the end of the day, we want to make sure that that DOGE is an advisory organization, right? Mm-hmm. Shouldn't be the end all. It should not be the one that's making the cuts. And I've said this both privately and publicly, that we need to ensure that the secretaries who are leading these organizations, these agencies that the president has entrusted, are the ones who are making the final determination along with Congress. So I've had concerns in the past, and I've raised them when there were cuts to the CDC, and all of a sudden World Trade Center health workers that serve first responders in my district were fired. We pushed back. We got those restored. But same thing now with Social Security offices. Concerned about how some of the DOGE proposals are going to impact customer service. So that's something right. I'm also going to be speaking out against. We need to make sure it's already pretty dismal customer service, and I'm concerned that any other changes will hurt seniors that I represent, so I'll be pushing back on that as well. But I think that, it needs to be advisory, and it needs to be well thought out. It should not be rash. It should not be I use the term sledgehammer. It should not be a sledgehammer. It should be a scalpel. I'm glad that the president also agrees now and has made some changes empowering his secretaries, because that's really, at the end of the day, it needs to be a thoughtful process right. At the end of the day.
Well, when you talk about that, I mean, I think, you kind of mentioned a bit on Social Security and where you're focused on. Medicaid cuts are also something that Democrats are kind of trying to use as a political weapon against Republicans right now, just in terms of whether or not you all are going to try to do that. Where do you stand on the Medicaid cuts? Does it worry you that Republicans are, even if you don't do the cuts, you've lost the messaging more?
I think it's unfortunate that the Democrats have politicized this issue. They are literally instilling fear in Americans to gain cheap political points. That's number one. Number two, I was among the members, the Republican members, who would not support the budget resolution unless we got certain assurances from the Speaker, which we did, on the Medicaid components that would be hurtful, like reducing the FMAP, which is the percentage that states get reimbursed. New York, for example, is at 50%. We could not see that lowered, or else it would be problematic. We got a commitment that that would not happen. Per capita caps, another issue. On the traditional Medicaid, per capita caps would be problematic for New York. So we pushed back on that. We received that type of commitment. But what I will say is that there is obviously a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse in the system. It's roughly $500 billion over 10 years. So when you're looking for 880, and you know that $500 billion can come from waste, fraud, abuse, and Medicaid alone, not even looking at Medicare. That is really significant. And I have to say that the Democrats who have tried to attack us on this, including my governor, They themselves have talked about how fraudulent, how much waste and fraud and abuse is in the Medicaid system. So they're being completely disingenuous now to act like there is no waste. And the truth is, if we want to preserve these programs, which we do, for the future, we need to get a hold of those fraudsters who are taking advantage and bilking the system and taking away from the people who they're actually meant to be for, which is our seniors, those with disabilities, children with disabilities. And when we make this program more efficient, the money's there for the people who it's truly intended for.
I want to shift gears a little bit. You mentioned SALT, but we have to dig a little bit deeper here.
Sure.
This is one of those big issues, especially for East Coast lawmakers, the state and local tax deduction. Leadership and the New York delegation have been meeting on this specific issue. Where do things stand? How confident are you? I mean, this has been a thorny issue for a while, that this is going to be able to get resolved.
Look, it's going to get resolved, and maybe not. Look, it's going to be a balance, right? It's not going to be completely eliminated, the cap, and I don't think anyone's really suggesting that. We're not looking to give tax breaks to the ultra wealthy or the billionaires. And the irony of it is, now that we're talking about SALT, the Democrats, some of them are saying they won't support anything that doesn't completely lift the cap. So they're the ones who are actually advocating for the billionaires now, interestingly enough. The tables have changed here. But what we will do, I believe, is come to a consensus where we are increasing that deduction so it really benefits middle-class families like the ones that I represent in Staten Island and Brooklyn. If you look at the history, if you want to get the people who are earning less than $500,000, on average, if we could triple the cap, that would cover a lot of the people that earn under $500,000. So I think that there's a general consensus, not just on our committee, but in Congress, that we need to do something about the SALT cap because it was unfair and it really put a burden on states like mine. But we also have to be eyes wide open in this and recognizing the American people need to know why we're having this fight right now. And it is because mayors and governors in blue states and Democrat states are spending their money so badly and increasing taxes, property taxes, income taxes, and that is why you need SALT relief. So really, it's a problem the local municipalities and states created, but we're trying to help and provide relief. And I think when people understand that, they appreciate what we're trying to do from the federal level, but they recognize that if they really want to fix this issue and they want lower income taxes, they need to do it through their mayors and governors. My governor and my mayor could easily cut the personal income tax rate, as the president did on the federal level. President Trump did that on the federal level. Why can't the local municipalities and states do that too? So that's why we're trying to find that balance here where we can provide some relief. But really, you need to hold your mayors and governors accountable for their ridiculous taxation.
All right, that's a two-pronged argument, but it'll be interesting to see how your constituents react to it. We are just days away from the Trump administration's announcement on tariffs. How do you think the administration's tariff policy could impact the broader tax reform conversation?
Well, first of all, I think income that's generated from tariffs should be allowed to be considered as offsets in this process. I think that's the number one way it could impact this discussion. I think the other thing is, this is another area where you want to do things with a scalpel and not a sledgehammer. I know that the president has been very smart and strategic in utilizing tariffs or the threat of tariffs to get certain foreign policy outcomes, certain cooperation, certain concessions from other countries. And he has a really strong point, in particular, when he talks about retaliatory tariffs. There are many countries that have treated American businesses, American farmers very unfair. There are certain barriers to entry that have been very difficult for, particularly, I would say, in agriculture, that he would like to see go away. Then obviously with Mexico and Canada, it's about border security. It's about stopping fentanyl and drugs. It's about having cooperation, which he's being successful in garnering that type of cooperation from our neighboring countries. So I think we'll see how things progress. It seems it's ever changing. This is another thing where things are changing, dates are changing, what type of commodity or whatever or product we're talking about changes. I would say the one thing that I'm concerned here on the pharmaceutical front, as I mentioned before, we need to bring our supply chain home. But even if we implement a tax policy or tax structure that incentivizes domestic manufacturing, it will take 7, 8, 10 years for those facilities to be built. We need to work with friendly countries. We should not be getting our medication from communist China, but we have very good allies. Ireland, Poland, Costa Rica, Switzerland. These are countries that are friendly nations that we have to be working with in the interim to get some of our pharmaceutical supply. And I think that that's something I would caution the administration on, increasing tariffs on pharmaceuticals. That needs to be looked at a little more closely.
Are you at all worried about a recession?
Well, they've been warning about a recession for well over a year. Right. And I have to say that, if things are slowing down, it's not going to be because of this president. It's going to be because of the prior administration. You cannot turn a blind eye to the damage that the Biden administration did with their reckless spending, with the overregulation, and with some of these mandates and the terrible energy policy. If you look at what's happening right now, since President Trump has come into office, oil prices have come down, egg prices have come down, mortgage rates have come down, inflation has come down. So we're actually moving, I believe, in a good direction. He is fixing some of those economic things. We'll see how the tariffs play into it. But we have to remember, and I've said this before, they said the same thing when President Trump put tariffs on China. And then President Biden came in, and guess what? He kept those tariffs on China. He actually increased them. So if they were so bad, why didn't he get rid of them then? It didn't have that type of impact that they thought it would. But what I would say is that let's just see how things ride out. But this has been an ongoing prediction for much longer than when President Trump got sworn in.
All right, TBD on that. But last question, and we're quickly going to get the hook here. But there's been a lot of optimism in the House Republican Conference about getting tax reform done Easter, before the summer. I'm much more bearish that timeline actually holds. What do you think happens?
I think it's good to have goals, right? It's good to have goals, and I think so far the speaker's been on point. You've said this on your podcast multiple times that we weren't going to do things, and we managed to do them all. And so what I think that we really do need to get the budget resolution figured out by Easter. I think that we have 3 weeks to do it, and we should be able to do it. That's number one. Then we'll have to see the different pieces. Now, in Ways and Means, we've been meeting regularly. We have these long marathon meetings, 8, 9, 10 hours, and we are going through all the various provisions. We're getting a good sense of where the members stand. We're identifying the cost, what are potential offsets, what are potential changes, how that would impact everything, and doing our homework so we're prepared when we get the final instruction, what the top line is, but right now we're kind of trying to work within that $4.5 trillion because that's the number that we know. And we'll see how that gets adjusted. But we're doing the homework now and getting everything ready. So once we have the budget resolution, we can be the first out of the gate, hopefully, with our proposals.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much, Congresswoman.
Great to be with you guys. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, take care. All right. Go that way. Perfect. All right. Thank you so much. That was a great conversation and leads very well into our next conversation. We have Intuit's CEO, Sasan Goodarzi, for a fireside chat. I believe he will be coming out shortly. One second. Please just hold. Hello. All right. Suzanne, come on out. Thank you so much. I got a microphone for you. Very good to see you. Thank you. We appreciate it. I know it's been a busy morning, so we appreciate you being here. Let's start. We are in the middle of tax season. I was talking about this earlier today. Intuit TurboTax works with millions of taxpayers every year. Share some of the top line trends that you're seeing this tax season.
Sure. Well, first of all, good morning. Thank you for having me here. I'll briefly just start with 30 seconds of who's Intuit.
Please.
Our mission is to power prosperity for consumers, small businesses, and mid-size businesses. And our focus is from credit building to wealth building for consumers with a focus on money and taxes. And I'll come to your tax question in a moment. And for businesses, it's really helping them grow their business. And, we have a platform that manages from lead to cash and making sure that we can fuel their success. In terms of tax season, customers think about it as money season, not tax season. They either want to make sure, following all the rules, they pay the least amount of money if they owe money, and they're really looking forward to their refund. I would say three big trends that we're seeing. One, the Gen Z is really more than ever looking for money. They're just cost of living. They're more than ever living the paycheck to paycheck. They're living off their parents, and they need access to their refund. So that's one big thing that's even more so than last year. The second is refunds. For those that do get refunds, is actually up about 6%. Last year, the average refund was about $3,000. This year is up nearly 6%. So that's another thing that we see, which is a good thing. And third is more and more folks have side jobs, so gig jobs.
Yep.
And that means that they don't really know if they owe money. Many don't know they're supposed to pay taxes quarterly, and so they need a lot of help, particularly now more than ever. And if they traded stocks, it's even more so. So those are the trends that we're seeing.
You also recently got some survey results. What were some of the things that you learned?
Well, the main results that we see is one through our data. I mean, we serve over 40 million plus customers, and the main thing is what I just articulated. I think the other thing I would just add in context of your question is there's a lot of noise in the media. The job cuts in the IRS. Are you not going to have to pay tax on tips? Those types of things. And so there's a lot of noise, and I think it's really important to just reinforce the folks. Get your taxes done. These are talks about the future. So I think that's the biggest thing I would say is there's a little bit of confusion as to, is something going to change before I file?
Well, it's interesting because it's, to your point, it's really been part of the political dialogue in the way that we haven't kind of the last 10 years talked about taxes, right? That's something you've seen certainly President Donald Trump have a lot of thoughts on the campaign trail. I was just speaking with Representative Malliotakis about the desire to simplify the tax code, right? I think everybody who does this every year wonders, why does it have to be so complicated? What is Intuit TurboTax doing in the meantime to make filing taxes easier?
Yeah, this is, by the way, such an important question, because if you just start with, again, businesses and consumers, I'm talking about the smaller businesses that file taxes. Ultimately, they spend $35 billion to have somebody else do their taxes for them, and $5 billion to do taxes themselves. So the market is such that consumers and businesses want somebody else to do it for them. And the reason is less about the tax code. It's more about confidence. I don't want to deal with this. So it's actually important to start customer back. I think the second thing I would say is we've been huge we've lobbied for simplify the tax code. And the reason is it's 6,000 pages of laws. It's millions and millions of lines of code. And the reality is it's a representation of our social system, meaning that how do I write off the mortgage on the house? What credits do I need to get? And I think I'll use an example to bring it to life in terms of why it's so important to simplify the tax code, because it's not going to change the structure of the market. People are going to still have somebody else do taxes for them, but it reduces errors. It's about making sure people get their credit. So if you look at the earned income tax credit, which, in somebody with 3 kids, they get up to $8,000 of earned income tax credit, and 50% have errors in them, 50%. And that's because the tax code is so complicated versus, making it simple so that you can still get the deductions, get the credits,
Right.
but reduce the errors, because that's real money for a family of three. And so I'll end with where I started, which is we have got to simplify the tax code because it means more money in the pocket of consumers, businesses, less errors, less tedious. Who needs 6,000 pages of tax law?
Not me, I'll tell you that much. I want to, let's just go a little bit deeper there, which is we're just steps away from Congress right now. They are currently paging through this tax code, trying to find money, trying to figure out what some of the offsets are. What is one or two of the things that Intuit wants, or you would say, hey, actually, if you did this one or two things, it would simplify things, it would make it easier?
Yeah, great question. Again, first and foremost, we have to understand consumers and businesses. I come from a family of small businesses. They want their money. They want their deductions. They want their credits. And they want, following all the rules and laws, right, to pay the least amount of money. So the first thing is let's work together to simplify the tax code. And a company, by the way, like Intuit, but all of private industry, we have 40 plus million customers. We have years of data. We can actually help with where you can simplify the tax code and still ensure that it benefits the customer. So I would say that's, first and foremost. And secondarily, just really being a proponent of with the leverage of AI tools, how do more businesses get even more credits, more deductions? Because the more you use data and AI tools, the more you can fuel the success of a business. And I think that's the second thing that I want us to work together on, all in service of how do we power the prosperity of consumers and businesses.
Well, you catch that catches my attention, right? Everyone here in Washington right now is trying to figure out how do you leverage AI, how do you leverage technology. Is that something Intuit has leaned into?
Yeah, if you go back to what I just talked about a moment ago, which is we're very focused on how do we help the consumer from credit building, which a lot of Gen Z need to build credit to even buy stuff, to wealth building. And for businesses to help them from lead to cash, we really bet the whole company on data and AI more than 6 years ago. First of all, it's the customer's data, not ours. But we have like over 500,000 data points per business. We do over 60 billion machine learning predictions per day. I say that not to overwhelm all of you with content, but just to say that our goal is to deliver done experiences. So the things that we are launching that's in market and we're working on are things like, based on all of your data, we will help you put together marketing campaigns. Who should you market to? Which customers are not buying X, Y, Z? How do you then take a lead and manage it in your pipeline? How do we automagically? So we just launched something in the fall where you can take a picture of a handwritten note or upload a PDF file if you're a business, and we will create an estimate, an invoice, progress payments, and make sure you get paid and make sure your books are right, all automagically with you always in control. But that is an example of how we use data and AI to really fuel the success of customers.
Super interesting. I want to talk about the IRS Direct file. Its future is uncertain. What is Intuit's take on the program?
Yeah, so before IRS Direct file, every American had access to doing the taxes for free through private industry, including you. Any one of you in this room that chooses to do your taxes yourself, not have somebody else do it, but yourself, free is available to all of you. So that was the case before IRS Direct file. And the second thing I would say is we've served almost 130 million Americans for free in the last 11 years. So free is available to everyone, and not just through Intuit, but private industry. Our perspective on IRS Direct file is you're spending money on something that already exists through private industry that does it quite well. And our perspective is it's a complete waste of taxpayer money because it's actually not free, because you're spending your money to build something that already exists. And I think the administration is taking a hard look at anything that falls in the bucket of waste and things that can really save taxpayer money. I think this falls into that bucket.
All right, Sam, we are almost out of time, but before I let you go, you all are the tax experts, as we've heard. What's the one or two things that you want Washington to know? We've got a lot of staff and advocates here in the room, but also on the live stream when it comes to these issues.
Two things. simplify the tax code so we can collectively help put more money in the pocket of consumers and businesses and eliminate errors and drudgery. The second is communicate to folks they need to file their taxes because there's a lot of noise in the marketplace. And folks are sort of waiting to see, is there some tax break coming before April 15th? And the reality is there isn't. It's just noise.
Darn.
File your taxes. Those would be the two messages.
File your taxes. I appreciate that. All right, we are going to leave it there. Son, thank you so much. Thanks all of you for joining us this morning, and a big thank you to Representative Malliotakis and her staff, as well as Intuit for partnering with us on this event. We've got a bunch of other events coming up in the coming weeks. You can check those out at punchbowl.news. Have a great day and stay safe, everybody. Thank you so much. That was fun.